Okay. So let's move on to Game of Thrones. I'm sure you're bored to death.
Tiny show. No one watched it. Yeah.
I'm sure you're bored to death of talking about it. But had you read the Song of Ice and Fire book series before you auditioned for the role as Marjorie?
No, I hadn't. And I came in the second season, so the phenomenon was nowhere near a phenomenon when I came on board that ship. It was the next sort of like 2-3 years that it became what it became. And I don't think any of us really knew what it was, and until right in the zeitgeist of when we were in it. And then it was, perfect for me because I left before the very end, so...
Don't worry, we have questions on that coming.
So I escaped that. I won the lottery on that show. I got in, did 5 years work, left. And I chose not to read the books because I realized that Dan and David were going to go in a different direction. And there wasn't... digging myself a hole here. I don't have to defend them anymore. They don't pay me anymore. And Marjorie wasn't a major character in the books. She wasn't fleshed out. George hadn't fleshed her out. I mean, that's literally what they said to me when they gave me the role. They were like, "We don't know what to do with her." So you look like you have some ideas. So I was like, "Not really, but I'll do what you tell me to do." Sorry, what was the question?
Had you read the books before?
I haven't read the books, no. And I'm normally quite, and as you've just worked out from Anne Boleyn or something, or, I will do my due diligence and my research if I think it's appropriate. Sometimes it's an advantage not to, especially if it's a beloved, especially if it's beloved text in another form, so.
Have you since read the books?
No.
Well, they won't be finished rather than being
Well, I was
finished
going to
badly.
say, has George finished them? I don't think George has finished them.
So you didn't feel any additional pressure, like you did with the historical characters, to fulfill a character that people have read the books and liked?
Not out of lack of respect for the book acolytes, not out of a lack of respect, purely because I felt at that time it wouldn't help me do my job better. In fact, if anything, I thought it might undermine my process. So that's why I took that decision. Mm-hmm.
Did you like the Marjorie that you ended up creating with Dan and Dave?
I felt at the time, I felt like Marjorie was being willfully misunderstood and misinterpreted. But maybe that's just because I was so close to the characterization that, of course I loved her. It's a very interesting one. We'll wait until that's open to the floor, I think, before I start making assumptions about what you all think.
I think this question was asked at Charles last term. Who was the best to work with on the set of Game of Thrones? Who was your favourite person to be in a scene with, or the person you looked at and thought, I wish Marjorie had a scene with them?
Oh, well, I loved Rory. I loved the Hound. And if I bumped into him at the airport, I was very happy. So I wish I could have had a scene with him. And then other than that, the most fun... I loved working with Jonathan as the Sparrow. I learned a lot because that's a man who has so many awards in so many different mediums that what he doesn't know isn't worth learning. He did a seminal Hamlet when he was younger. He's an incredible stage actor, and he's just done it. He's lived it, breathed it. Dame Diana is, rig is rig, it's like... So you're honoured to be on screen with her. It was such an eclectic mix. The joy of the job was that you never quite knew who you were going to be opposite next season. That was the joy of the job. And so it changed year on year,
As well as people you looked at and thought, I want to act alongside them, were there roles that you looked at and thought, oh God, I wish I was Daenerys, or I wish I was Cersei?
No, I never. No, because like I said to you, I had the best of both worlds. If my role in Game of Thrones had been bigger, I would never have been able to go and do the Hunger Games. Or you have to dedicate so much of your time to those more prevalent roles. So I had this beautiful, I had this beautiful experience for 3-4 years where I was on one of the most successful shows in television, but I also had 6 months of the year off to go and pursue other jobs, be it stage or, smaller projects. So I was literally grateful that the equation was so wonderful for me.
Did that mean that after the years you spent on Game of Thrones, it was difficult to move on?
What do you mean?
Was it sad when you realised that Marjorie was dying?
I was champing at the bit to get out, to be honest with you. Yeah, no, because...
Please kill me off, please.
Well, I've said this in other interviews before. I'd asked Dan and David to do a stage play the year before, a George Bernard Shaw. And it had overlapped with Game of Thrones shooting by 2-3 days. And so because of the mechanics, as you rightly said, of that machine, the mechanics of that machine, the number of actors involved, the number of locations, there's just no way they're going to try and work out an actor's schedule for that show. So the answer was no, you can't. And I was really quite upset at the time. And they phoned me and they said, don't worry, Nat, we don't normally tell people this, but you'll be free next year. And I was like, oh, okay. But it means I had the advantage over a lot of my colleagues that I sort of could start planning.
Did you see colleagues sat in a first reading of an episode, and that would be when they realised that their character died, or?
No, because there would be a table read, but that didn't always happen, and not everyone could be there, and invariably people would die in later episodes in the show. And people are reading that quietly in their bedroom, so we didn't really see that, no.
Is it a strange atmosphere to have so many people you work with for, like Dame Dan, across several series, and then suddenly you don't work with them anymore? Or is that just part and parcel of the job of being an actor that you have?
Kind of part and parcel, and it makes us sound a bit unfeeling or mercenary, but that's the job. It's the troubadour lifestyle. It's the circus family. You go somewhere, you bond, you have an incredible time. There's ups, there's downs. It's a chapter in your life and you go on, And that's whether it's, an independent film, a TV show, or stage. So, no, it's always sad. But you spend your life saying hello and goodbye to people, so I suppose you learn to get good at it, or or you find the love of your life on a job. Obviously, Kit and Rose ended up together after Game of Thrones. David and I met each other on stage doing Venus in Fur, and and now have a daughter and a life together. So you don't say goodbye to everyone.
Do you have a favourite memory from Game of Thrones?
Favourite memory?
Sorry, it's a tough question.
The Purple Wedding was, we were all together as a cast for 4 or 5 days in Croatia. It was like a big frat sorority union party. Because so many of the scenes in GOT are 2 people talking or 3 people talking, but normally, just 2 people in a room, or, and so on and so forth. Those unlikely couplings that the show was so very good at. So for us all to be, shooting a big party scene, and to be, there was 10 or 12 lead characters all there, we all had a fun week.
Now, I gather from your previous comments that you have seen the seasons after Marjorie's death. And
I'm not responsible for them.
And don't worry about being polite. Charles Dance certainly wasn't.
What did Charles say?
You can watch it on our YouTube channel.
Nice plug.
But no, it was not polite. What did you think of season 8? Is it where you thought they were going? Do you think it's where they thought they were going?
Huge disclaimers here. Okay, I think this is the perfect example of people, if the IP does not, sorry, Oxford, I don't have to explain what IP is. If the intellectual property is already there from start to finish, like we were talking about Lord of the Rings upstairs, then an awful lot of work has been done by Tolkien or Hemingway or Jane Austen, or so many man-hours has been done in creating the structure of that story. And if it's a novel, it's been through its editors and its publishers, it's been refined and refined and refined. And, or various versions of that. The story has been stress tested. If that story, a 3-act story from start to finish, has already existed and is given an adaptation. When you are watching shows, and it's normally shows because a film script will be commissioned, obviously having been fully written, 100 pages, 110 pages as is standard, 90 to 110 pages depending. You've got your 3-act structure, start to finish, this is the film. They commission TV shows without always knowing what the ending is. You may have noticed. Sometimes they know what the first 2 seasons are, and sometimes they know what the first 5 seasons are. But I think, what an audience doesn't always understand is the number of cooks in the kitchen of the studio, and what the writers are up and the showrunners are up against. There are many, many layers of opinion. And not least actors' contracts. They want to get out of contracts. They've been doing this job for 8-9 years. They want to go and do something else. There's so many layers to the industry that the audience don't care. Of course you don't care about, and you shouldn't care about, because you're just watching your story that you want to watch for escapism and to take you away. But there's elements of the business that get in the way. Literally, the price tag and people's contracts. And at the other end is, those stories that have already been written by greats. They're a reason why those stories are great. And they've been fully thought out and fully rounded. David and Dan did not have that. I am defending them. Maybe it's just...
Well, who has a better story than Bran the Broken?
Maybe it's just, I empathize. I was disappointed. I was. But I also fully appreciate what they must have been up against. And I think it would have almost been an impossible job for everyone, for the majority of people to be satisfied, because it was so beloved, that show, and people bonded with their characters that they adored the most so intensely, which is when we're doing our job well. And it's what storytelling should be. It should be cathartic. It should transform, your life momentarily and take you away. People are so emotionally invested in all that plethora of characterization. How are you ever going to satisfy everyone? Or most people? It's really tough. Was that an unsatisfying answer? A dissatisfying answer? You can argue with me about it later.
Has it changed has it sort of slightly stained your experience of the show and your years on it? Knowing that all the characters you interacted with, you now know what the ending is?
No. Stained? No. No. Because I was in it, breathing it, doing what was right in that moment for my character at that moment. And like I said, the actor's job when playing a character and actually in your career should be to be in the moment. So when I was in the moment, I was having a ball. And then and then after that, I'm not the actor anymore. I join your ranks and I become the audience member, and I'm detached from that. I don't equate those two emotions. They're separate identities.